Hi guys, and welcome back to Beinkamp Draws. This video is called Procreate Tips, and I'm gonna talk about mechanics and shortcuts throughout my digital drawing process. As many of you know, Procreate has a lot of these fancy features and shortcuts and ways to make the drawing go a lot smoother. First of all, for me, I learned a lot by trial and error, and I also watched a lot of other people on YouTube do their tips and tricks. And what I noticed was that many people have this list and they go through like first thing, second thing, third thing, and they are very organized. But I actually thought that the easiest way for me to present the mechanics that I use is simply by drawing and showing you guys how I use Procreate along the way. I still have made like a little list in the description that you can just go to, where I list the things that I go through so you know what you're in for right now. So let's just begin and see how many tips we'll get to talk about. So one of the first things that I usually do when I start a drawing is either I go by reference or I just go by imagination. But for the sake of this video and showing how I cut in my reference pictures, I think we should go by reference this time. But let's say I want to do a character drawing of, what should we say? A mole. So we search for mole picture. And we see all of these cute little guys popping up. And what could be a cute picture here? This one is actually pretty good because we see the entire body. But I'm not so concerned about body. I'm more concerned about the face. I think this face is really good because you see the nose and the mouth and all the details, even his tiny beady eyes. So what I do is I use my finger and I hold it down, and I'm sorry guys, this is in Danish, but I save the picture to my archive, which I have right here. This is some of my old photos. And then I press this icon and I press Add to Procreate. This sends the picture to Procreate so I can open it from inside the app. This is very smart. So if you just go back here, it is the first picture in my library right now. So here we go. What I do is then I want to sort of clip this picture or cut it into the drawing that I'm going to do, or into the canvas that I'm going to be working on. So I press this icon and then I take 3 fingers, I slide down, and I get this little menu. And I have a lot of options here. I can cut and paste, I can copy paste, and what I want to use here is just copy. So I copy this layer, which is obviously the layer that I have my picture on. Then I go out into gallery and I normally paint in A4 size, and what I've done with this is I've actually turned up the DPI to 320 because, you know, I like to work with quite a high DPI, and I think this fits my purpose. So, oh sorry, picked the wrong one. So I picked this one, and I can turn it either way that I want to, but for this video I've already set my camera to this position. And then I take 3 fingers again, slide down, and I press paste. And usually I like to keep my reference pictures up in the left hand corner, sorry. And then I make sure to start drawing on a new layer. Always keep my drawings on separate layers. That is a really good idea. And then I go into my pencils to see which kind of pencil I want. And as you can see here, I'm actually using some pencils that I made myself, called Linus Digital Drawing brush set. And the reason that I made my own brushes is not because I think that... Why do I have 3 of these? Well, actually, then I can show you that if you want to delete a brush set or some brushes, you can just press it like so, and you can press delete. Aha! Let's just pretend I made so many brush sets so I can show you that. You believe me, right? But anyways, it's not that I think the brushes in Procreate are bad or anything, but it didn't really fit me, and I like my own brushes a bit better, and this entire brush set has everything that I need. If you're interested in this brush, you can click on this video where I go through everything and how they work. And if you would like to buy them, I have an Etsy store that is also in the link description, or sorry, in the description with a link for this video. And it's really, they're quite cheap because I know we're all on a budget, so check that out if you want to do it. But anyways, I'm going to start out with my construction pencil. And another tip that I want to give you is that if you go into a brush that you want to work with, you can press on it and you're taking to this panel, and you can sort of work with how you want it to look and how you want it to feel and stuff like that. Again, I don't want to go through this tip too much because I actually also made a video on how to sort of adjust your own brushes. So check that out right here if you want to know that. But let's start out with this. I like to keep it in blue. And let's just get drawing and see how many tips we can get underway. So, we start out with the face, usually just by drawing a circle. I can get a little closer for you guys so you can see what I'm doing. And we try to already on this face, like, we want to plot in that nose right there. Now it has a really cute kind of mouth. I sort of want to emphasize in like a big smile. Like that. And it seems like the characteristic for the mold that sort of separates it from a mouse is like the very tiny eyes right here and the small ears. And it has sort of like, as I seem to recall from the other pictures we looked at, sort of like a pear-shaped body with like broad hands. I'm not gonna make him as broad as on this because it seems kind of menacing, and I want to keep him looking really, really cute. Well, I've been raised by Disney movies, so cuteness factor is a big deal for me. Not always though. I actually like to sometimes mix in the cuteness factor with a little bit of spookiness, which is also going to be one of my styles in a new game that I'm working on, which is going to be out in 2 years, so stay tuned. So, I think this is an okay little outline for this guy. I don't know if you noticed, or that if I even did it, because sometimes I'm in a mode, but whenever I need to erase something, instead of going down here, which is the undo button that you can just press, there is this nifty little trick, which is you take 2 fingers and you press, and that is your undo button. And you can also, by the way, press this and hold it down, and then it goes a little faster. And that goes for the 2 fingers undo trick as well. If you just hold it down, it erases really quickly. So that's a really cool trick, and I use it all the time. So let's try and refine this little guy. We make a new layer, which you do by pressing this little multiply icon. I think I'm going to pick another brush, maybe keep it a little bit brown, like so. Check the layer is in position. Over here you can pick and choose what kind of mode you want the layer to be in. So let's say you want to draw in multiply or overlay or whatever, but I want to keep it on normal for now. all the other features I will go through eventually. And we got the right brush. Okay. Now what I like to do is to like take a little memo of this picture. Keep in mind, but also step a little away from it. So now we start sort of giving this guy a little life. Another trick is to go back into your construction layer here and go into opacity. Turn it down a little so you can see what you're doing on the other layer right here. This just works quite well when you're changing layers, so you can see what you're doing and you're not getting in the way. Sometimes you can get a little stuck on the layers that you're doing because you're like, oh, that line has to be there because I made it before. And it's the point of making a construction layer is not to get stuck on what you're doing. It's just to give you a sort of a reference point that you like. Now I think I'm gonna give him some features here. Sorry if you're thinking, oh, you're not detailed enough right now, but it's not really the point right now to be super detailed. Give him a little bit of fur. Maybe even a little bit of detail around the mouth there. See, I'm going back here. You can see that he has sort of a light gray color around his nose. I think I want to do something with that and use it to create a little bit of a facial feature. And now to the hands. See, these are kind of becoming claws. It's not really the same as on the paw right here, but close enough that I at least think that it resembles a mole a little bit. And the same over here. Like that. And sort of starting to getting somewhere here. And then we have his feet down here. They're just peeping out. I think this guy is a little bit... Do we want to say fat? We don't want to be fat shamers. There's nothing wrong with being like a little bit luxurious. And a little tail right there. So, this is our little guy. But as I zoom out, you get a bit of a broader perspective on what you're doing. And the first thing that springs to my eyes is that I kind of think that the little detail I made right here with his mouth, it's not really working. I want a more clean line. So I take my eraser, which is the icon we have over here. I find the right size. And I also make sure that I have the right brush. Usually I keep it on airbrushing because I like the airbrushing abilities on the eraser. And this medium hard airbrush is really good as an eraser. So I just refine that a little bit more, and already right now I think that works a little bit better for me. And I can always go back on my brush here fairly quickly and make sure it works. And I also think, of course, he's going to get all of these little hairs in there. Not too much, but just enough. Another thing that sort of springs in my eyes on this stage is that he's kind of askew for me. So I want to adjust him, but how am I supposed to do that? Well, first of all, I remove my construction layer because I don't really need that anymore. So away with that. What I do then is that I press the layer that I want to do the adjusting on. And then I press this icon again, you remember from before, copy pasting. And you can still get that menu if you slide your free fingers, but that's not really what I want to do right now. Right now I want to adjust him, and this little green line right here is actually what I want to use. When I push that, I can sort of slide him back and forth and find out, okay, where is he supposed to sit? And then I'm like, am I just going to use my eyes and my sight to figure out if he is on the correct line? Normally I do, but I don't have to do that because I can go into Canvas and then I can go into Drawing Guide. I flip that on, and then you can see here I get all of these little lines that actually confirms that he's not quite right. He's a little bit askew. If I want to edit it, I can go into this, I can pick another color for like purple, I can do that. I can decide the thickness, the opacity, the grid size, everything. Let's just keep it there. I could also do some perspective. So if I press this, I can put in perspective lines. So if I wanted to do a background, I could sort of put that in. But let's get back to that in another picture. This guy is not really meant for that right now. Let's go back to the 2D grid. So we keep the lines there, and now we can go back in, we can select our little mole here, and now we can sort of try and place his feet down here so it matches up with this line. I think he looks good there. I think he looks better there anyway. And then now the lines are really just in the way, so I press there and I flick them off, and now we're back. Okay, let's say I want to do 2 different styles of coloring, which means that I want to copy this guy. We already know how we copy. 3 fingers, and whoops, we have to be careful when we use the 3 fingers. It's better to do like that. Sometimes they slip. That's a little bit annoying, but here it is. Now, before we just said copy, but it's actually quicker to just say copy and paste, and that means it pastes it in directly. And then maybe you're like, oh, but it needs to be on another layer. But Procreate is built in such a way that it actually does that by itself. So I just press copy paste, and I can see they're on 2 different layers right here. Let's remove that now. Go back to this layer. We pick our mole. Let's put it here. Then the other layer. And we put this guy here. Cool. So there we are. But then I'm like, he's a bit too broad. What should I do about that? I could go back in, and as long as I keep this in freeform when I got it marked like this, means that I can actually do what I want with him. Like, I can make him taller, like skinnier, like that. I can even, if I press one corner and I hold it down, I can sort of draw one of the corners out and make his head really, really big. I can do the same if I distort like that. Then I don't have to press it down. I can also warp it, which means that I can select these lines and I can push them inward and make him look really ridiculous like this. So you can sort of play around with this. If you go back to reset, you go back to where you came from. And you can also flip him like this. You can turn him upside down. You can rotate him. This is a really, really good little tip. At least I think so. And if you press uniform, it means that you don't really mess with the lines. You just make him bigger or smaller. This is also really important. when you're drawing and you need to move things around, that you don't want to mess with the line of your selected item. Let's say we keep him there. Now we got two different sort of characters to work with in terms of coloring. And yes, coloring would actually be my next phase right now, so let's just move straight to that. So again, we make a new layer, and I'm still going to keep it in normal mode because I'm just going to apply color normally, like you would do with any other kind of piece of drawing that you had right in front of you. So now I just have to decide what kind of brush I want to use for this. I'm thinking I'm gonna start by blocking in the color detail. So let's find a good form for this. For example, this color. And I'm just gonna work with this guy right here. Now, what you want to do is you want to take this layer with the line art, and what you do is you press the pen down, and then you can move it like so. And then you can figure out where you want to place it. I want to place it right on top, so I have the layer that I'm coloring in right underneath it. So as you can see now, hopefully, it doesn't really smudge out the lines because the lines are on top of my coloring, which is exactly where I want it. So now I'm just trying to block in the color, nice and easy. I normally go about it just like this when I'm coloring small spaces, but sometimes you can also select just the outline. Let's try with the paw right here, just like so. You see now this is kind of closed in a way. So what you can do is that you can drag this color from your color palette down to where you want it to be. And you see? It's sort of like a paint bucket tool. But the reason why I don't use it all that often is because you can see here, it still doesn't really color all the way in. So you have to go back in and correct that. So that is why I'm usually just doing it manually like this. So now we have the color outline of this little character. What you can do is you can go in and color block some of the details in the fur, because if we do like this, you can see it doesn't really have all those tiny details of the fur around here. So we're just gonna turn the opacity up a little bit so we can see the lines. Go back into this color blocking layer, make the brush a little smaller, and then we can make a little fur detail. It's not gonna be that much because we can render it in afterwards, but it's nice to have like a little bit of detail on this level already. It's not gonna be that perfectionistic, just enough to show you guys what I mean. And there we go. I think that's quite enough for the fur, but let's just make sure that the nose is okay. You know what? I'm actually not gonna do the whiskers. That's easier to do when we're done. Okay, guys. So now we have this color block-in. And the reason I call it a block-in is because we block in all the details. I'm gonna turn this back on so we can see what we're working with. Next thing I do is I create a new layer. I make a clipping mask like this, and that means that everything you draw in here is connected with what you've already drawn on this layer. And what I did was finding this clipping mask right here. Super easy to make. So, okay. What I'm doing now is a little bit different as to what I usually do. There's a couple of ways of coloring, but I kind of developed a new method that I like and think fits my purpose. And that's putting in the shadows and highlight already on this layer. It doesn't mean that we're not going to work with it later, but I'll show you guys why I do it. So go back in and I select the airbrush that I want to use. Now I'm selecting this color, and instead of pushing this button right here, which is where you usually select your color, you can see how it changes. I just take my finger and I hold it down on the color and I select it like that. That is super easy if you are sitting and drawing and you just want to make a quick selection instead of going all the way back over here. It doesn't seem like a long distance, but like, trust me, once you're in the flow, and it's so much easier just to do this little trick. So I select the color, I make it a little darker, and then I figure out how big I want it to be. First I'm gonna do like a little bit of shading over here. Not that much. Then I select the bottom color again, make it a little lighter. So now he's got these tones to work with. Now I go back into my darker color here, make it a little darker still, a little smaller here, and now I'm trying to pinpoint in like where I have, can we call it more dense shades, shadows. You can see it's turning right there with his little back leg there around the stomach. Maybe that was a bit too much. What you can do if you want a really, really clear shade is you can take your selection tool right here and then you can draw around the arm like this. Now we're making sure we're not drawing on this bit right here. Then we take our brush. You can see this is still selected. Make it a little bigger maybe. Now we draw in the shade of the arm right there. And then when we deselect it by pressing here again, you can see it didn't cross over into the arm, making it even more like contrastly. Contrastly? The contrast between this color and this color is more dense, noticeable. I really need to work on my English vocabulary. Now I'm just going back in here and refining the shades just a little bit. I don't want to make a selection right now because I think it's working fine with just doing a little smaller size brush and then working with it like so. You can sort of see the claws cast off a shade right there as well. Maybe we want to keep it a little lighter when we go up here because we got a lighter color from the sun up here. Right now I'm just very naturally trying to work in some form to this character. Here you have to have a little knowledge about, I was almost about to say 3D. Actually, that's not incorrect. You need to be aware of where the light is coming from, and drawing in the shadows and the light is actually what makes the character look a little bit more 3D-like. It's not supposed to look too 3D because we do want to keep that 2D kind of feel about it. But a little bit of shade and highlight doesn't hurt anyone. See See, that was maybe a bit too much. Just want a little bit of detail here to make it look like the eye pops out a little bit more. A little bit of shading on the nose like that. Now I want to make an extra highlight. So I pick the lightest color. I make it a little lighter. And then I just go in and emphasize the character's highlight features a little bit more. For example, right here on the arm. This is a good place to use the selection tool as well. Like so. So right here on the arm, the light will hit it. So you can see it kind of separates the arm a little from what's going on underneath it, making it pop out more. So as you can see, slowly we're starting to getting somewhere with our character. Sometimes I wait with drawing in the shadow and the light until till after the coloring, so then I would have switched those two steps and then do the coloring first and then draw in the light. But I think, for me anyway, putting in this step right here works really well for me when applying the color. So here we have, I think I kind of want to make his stomach stand out just a little bit more over here on this side. But yeah, I think that's cool for a beige shadow and highlight. You can see how it looks. Kind of brings him out a little bit more. So what I do now is I make a new layer. Again, I press clipping mask. And now I want to apply the color. And for that, I think I'm going to use this painting brush. I really like that. Or maybe the paintbrush flat. Both of these two are really good. For like maybe a rougher look, you can use this because it has sort of like some more details in it, where this is more smooth. I think we're gonna go with this one. So now I'm going to decide what color he should be. We could go with a normal black, brownish black of the mole, but I think I'm gonna go a little crazier with these colors. Maybe make him purple. Let's go with purple. Now I'm not gonna keep this layer in normal mode. I'm actually going to keep it in overlay mode. There are like a couple of modes that you can keep it in. When you're doing this, you could go into color and then you color over it like this. But I don't know, I think there's something about overlay mode that works a little bit better for me. So that's the mode that I'm gonna keep it in. I'm just gonna make sure that everything looks correct. It has the right opacity. So now we have the basic color for this mole, and I'm actually quite happy with this kind of brownish beige on the purple color right here. So I think I'm gonna stick with that. Now just to show, when you go into color, the difference. it's not that it's not working, this color. You can see how it looks normally. But I think when you go into overlay, it's closer to the normal colors that you pick, and I like that. So I know this is the real way to apply color, but I would recommend that you do it in overlay mode. Now the next step for me is to start working with the line art a little bit more. And what I do is that I don't want to erase the line art just like so. That doesn't really work. There are some details to the line art that I actually would like to work with. But then again, I would want to save this line art, because if I start to erase it and change it, where will it go? Now I did already make a copy of it, but let's say that you didn't do that. You want to slide to your left, like this, and then press duplicate. And you can just press this button, and that means that you can't see that layer, but it's always there if you do anything wrong and you want it back. So now we can work with this and not care about if we do anything wrong, because we saved it right there. So what I do is I take 2 fingers and I press down and I slide to the right. This locks the layer, which means that just like the clipping mask attaches to the layer underneath, this layer attaches to what's already on the layer, which means that now you can only draw in that. So now I'm going to try to work with the line art and make it blend in a little bit more. I'm still going to have this brush. And then I'm going to select the color closest to my line art. And then I can just draw on the line art like this. And as you can see, it kind of fades. And that's basically just what I'm doing the whole way through. I select the color on the line art and I just draw over it like this. And as you can see here, sometimes you want to keep some of it, and then I just leave that right there. Like especially here around the mouth, it's nice to keep some of the line art, because it gives a lot of details to the mouth. But maybe you can make it a little lighter if you want to. I'm still keeping it fairly light here. With the nose, I think that I want to draw out the line art a little bit more, like this. But can you see how it changes the, well, attitude and the look of the drawing a little bit? Instead of erasing the line art but drawing it in like this, I think it saves you a little bit of rendering time, because if you just erase it, maybe you use some valuable details or quality in the line art that you actually like. But this is a really good foundation for starting to rendering, which comes on a totally separate layer with no clipping mask, no locking, no anything. This is where you can go a little bit ballistic with your drawing. So let's say I pick this brush for detailing. Now I can go in and add those extra little fine hairs. It gives all that nice texture. I can edit out where I didn't think my line art was that pretty. And normally this stage takes a long time, because this is where you really wanna sort of make the whole thing look luxurious and smooth and everything. And really this layer depends a little bit on, say, how, perfectionistic you are in your art. And how much you like the line art look. Because maybe you don't want to make it too smooth, maybe you like the whole line art thing. Sorry if I'm repeating myself, you guys. Sometimes I get lost a little bit when I'm drawing, and then maybe I'm just mumbling a little bit. But hey, that's all part of it, right? I could spend hours on this stage right here, but let's leave it at that. Now, what I like to do now is actually apply yet another layer of shadow and highlight. And what you do here is what I like to do is I like to merge these layers. So there's a really cool shortcut for that. You take your finger, I don't know if I can do it with a band-aid, but let's check. Take your finger here on the top layer and the bottom layer of what you want to merge, and then you just go like. Now you have this layer here. If you don't like to merge and you want to keep all of your steps, you can just duplicate all of these layers and then make a group of it. Let's say that you want to save this layer, for example, together with this layer. You can take your pen and then you can slide to the right, and then you just select all the layers that you want to save, and then you press group, and then you get a little group of layers. Now, I feel brave enough to just merge all of these, and I don't think I'm gonna go back. So now this layer we have right here, we're gonna create a clipping mask again. And this time we're gonna use one of my favorite shadow highlight techniques, which is we go in and we pick a dark blue, then we drag that over. It colors the whole thing, and you think, oh no. But fret not, because we're gonna put it in to multiply. Now we got a really cool shade thing going here. And the only thing you have to do right now is to figure out, well, how light and how dark do I want it? I think around here is good for the purpose of this example, because I want there to be some contrast between light and shadow. I press it, and then I click mask, and now I can start to erase the shadow that I put in. So I go into my airbrush here, and now I can draw in the light, and I want the light to come from this side, just right on his face. Slowly I start to draw in the light. This kind of emphasizes his form even further. Maybe that was a bit too much. So even though we already did make some shadows and some highlights, we're really just emphasizing them by doing this. And now when you go back into this, you can see how much of a contrast you like to have. Maybe you just want to make a little bit of a contrast. Maybe you want really high one, but then you have to be careful with your lighting here. Then you might want to select, like I showed you before, and then draw in a highlight without drawing underneath his arm. But when you have it a bit lighter, it doesn't really matter that much. I think right here is good, because I just gently want to emphasize the lighting here. Now, a really nifty trick you can do as well here is to apply the color of the light that you have in the picture. Like, let's say that the color of the light is from the sun. Usually you have sort of like a yellowness to it. And I'm going to show you how you can draw that in with it looking really good. Again, even though you're lightening it, I prefer not to use color dodge, for example. That is a go-to technique of a lot of people, but I think it's way too strong and it's difficult to control and doesn't have that warmth that I'm looking for. So, So again, I go to my overlay. I really work with this mode a lot. And as you can see, it gives it a little warmer light to it. And I just think like that really works so well. So yeah, that's some of the things that I go through when I'm creating a drawing and you know, just building up a character step by step. Just to go through some extra tips that I haven't been through yet. Let's say that you want to make this character into like a nice layout front page with a text, so it looks like the front cover to a book. So what we do, we go back in here and now we're starting to cleaning up. Well, I don't want to use this nor that. I'm fairly certain I'm not going to use this either. Oh, sorry. When you merge these layers, it's very important that you have the clipping mask right there telling that layer that the color you put on that is actually connected with this right here. Otherwise, I can show you what I did wrong before. If it's not in clipping mask, you can see right here when I merge them together, it doesn't really lock itself with the color underneath. Sometimes I forget that. There we go. So, we want this to look like a book cover, okay? We don't really want the character to be placed in a cover that is turned this way on the canvas. So, you just take 2 fingers and you turn the canvas. But lo and behold, the character turns with it. But as I showed you before, you can just rotate it. Like so. Now you have the character right here. Maybe we want it a little bit bigger. Remember to press uniform, otherwise if you go freeform, you change it too much. We don't want that. We want it to be kept in this form that we already made for it. Maybe we want it placed a little lower. And now we're getting a little bit perfectionistic. So we also want kind of like a little shadow that's cast off the character. Nothing much, but just enough to make it seem like it's standing nicely. So that works fine enough. I can't help myself, you guys. I feel like going in and applying just a little bit of extra highlight. Stay with me and stay patient. Once again, I go into overlay mode, which means that it fits the color underneath. I pick the sort of highlight that I want. Something around here seems nice. I go into my pencils, pick the one that I want, and I just make a little bit of highlighting here. Just a tiny bit. You can see how it merges with the color underneath. It's maybe a bit too harsh. This smudge tool is really great for when you want to smudge out something that you've done, making it look a little bit smoother. This is why it's dangerous for me to make tutorials, because sometimes I get stuck in something that should actually just take a short while. But I guess if you're still with me right now, it's because you have the time to immerse yourself into this. I'm just gonna make a quick normal layer on top with highlightings that I control the color of a little bit more. Like so. There, I just wanted to add a little more to it. But let's say this is your front cover now, and you want to add some text. This is a new thing that you can do in Procreate. You're going to add, and then this panel pops up. And then you have this text, and you can write, yeah, what should we say? Manny the mole. Glorious adventures. So now it says Manny the Mole's Glorious Adventures. Super catchy. Now, but what about this style right here? Nah, it doesn't really work, does it? So we go into Edit Style, and over here you can see the different fonts that you have to work with. For example, this Bradley handwriting, that might be cool. So what should we go with? That might work as well. Ah, there we go. And then you can adjust the size. Kind of like this size right here. And everything looks cool. You can maybe turn the opacity up and down. I like it to be fully on. You can say, should it be to the left, to the right, in the middle, like so. Should it be underlined? Everything you want to do, like with a normal text, like you can do in Microsoft Word or anything like that, you can almost do the same here. You can also import a font if you want to do that. But let's just work with the ones we got. So we said done, but it's still all askew. So what do? We press our selection tool right here, and then we can resize it like this. That looks kind of neat, but maybe I'm not so happy with the color. So I go into the text again. And I say edit text. You can always go back and do that. And then you try to maybe find a different color. Maybe this works. Lo and behold, it actually does. Maybe I also want to have a text saying, remember you can always go back to letters by pressing that icon. I want it to say maybe written by Lena Beinkamp. That's me. Then go back again. This time I want to make it a little smaller and have it all the way down here. So there you go. Now we have a front page for a book. And maybe you can go in, do something with the background color. All sorts of things are possible. And that's a really cool new feature that Procreate added. So, okay. That's all of the tips that I could cram into one step-by-step drawing. I really hope you liked it. I'll remember to list all of these different tips in the description so that you can get an overview of that fairly quickly. If you have any questions, you can always write. And of course, give a like and a subscribe if you like this and want me to make more videos. I will be happy to oblige. But thank you for watching and have a really nice day. Bye!